the opportunity here. Many of you have our presentation that was delivered months ago, but then again refreshed last week. It's a 60-some page document. We do have it on the screen. We do not tend to walk through that. We think it'll be more productive maybe to hit some of the highlights. It would take us 2 to 3 hours to get through that full document. We want to tell you a little bit about ourselves, what we see as the opportunity, and then tell you a little bit about the process that we would go through. But we want to be able to have this as an open discussion, answer your questions. We usually find that is most productive. And so a little bit about myself. Again, John Bodine. I have been in healthcare consulting for 25 years. I focus exclusively on strategic and affiliation advisory in the healthcare and academic medical center space. So in other words, working with health systems and with institutes of higher education that have a health focus as well. Both of those, I think, are relevant in this situation because potential partners of yours are some of the academics that are in the marketplace. As far as some of the work that we have done, between Casey and myself, just a real brief background, we've collectively worked on over 200 healthcare affiliations. That spans the service lines. Most of those are hospitals, but it also involves things such as surgery centers, rehab facilities, things such as that. So it's all health services related. Of note, Casey and I were the primary individuals that worked on the Trinity Mother Frances Christus affiliation a year and a half ago or so. We spent much of a two-year period working with them all the way from the strategic conversations that we were having. It took a long time for that system to get to the point of saying, hey, let's go out and find a partner that better positions us for being able to achieve our goals over the long term. And so we spent the greater portion of 2 years getting to know this market and ultimately executing on what two organizations called the Healthcare Affiliation of the Year across the country. And so because of that, we did get to know the market. We did research on you as part of that. We see, I guess taking a step back, why are we interested? Why are we here? One is we are highly confident that we can execute a successful affiliation and partnership for you. Why do we say that? Number one, you possess the investment attributes that will be very attractive to potential partners. So in other words, if we didn't think you were well positioned, we would take a pass on this. When we start looking at why are you special, number one, you're proud of this facility and what you've built over the years. You've got a favorable reputation. You've got the long-standing history. We drove around, we looked at all the facilities and the like. You've got an attractive campus. You've got some areas that are generally, you can tell, well kept, things like that. You've got a staff that you're proud of, provider relationships and the like. You've got a comprehensive service line. We looked at some of your credentials and some of the certifications that you have. You are an attractive partner, and thus we think there is going to be interest. Number two, this is what we do. We help health systems and hospitals determine their strategy and execute on their strategy in a lot of cases, especially for the independent hospitals, the community hospitals, as well as the municipal-owned hospitals. That involves partnerships in today's market. And so we do focus on this type of opportunity, and we're real good at it, and we're successful. So for those of you who don't know who Huron is, I'll just give you a few minutes or a few comments on who we are. There's a lot of information that is in the materials that were presented, but Huron is the preeminent consulting firm for healthcare and higher education. We are nationwide. There's roughly 3,500 employees within our organization. Again, we basically provide every service that you guys, that health systems can utilize other than legal. And so we're very familiar with the industry itself. We're real familiar with the market. We're real familiar with, because of our prior work here and our experience in the higher ed and the like. We're also familiar with all the potential partners. We have access to all the decision makers. We know what their criteria is. We're able to execute usually and come to a conclusion as to whether or not there's interest real quick. Just a couple of examples of some of our breadth and scale in the two industry segments that we work in. In healthcare, we've worked with over 450 health systems, well over 1,000 individual facilities. In the area of higher education, we've worked with all 100 of the top research institutes of higher education. Most of those organizations are academic medical centers. And so we've basically worked with everyone. We've worked with everyone that we at least identify as potential partners in your area. And so just based on that, again, our confidence level of executing a favorable conclusion to your partnership search is very high. I'm going to have Casey talk a little bit about the process that we would go through and how we envision this. We do have some other comments that we will intersperse as we go through this, but we want to leave plenty of time so that we can answer your questions and hit on some specific areas of discussion. So Casey?
Good afternoon. I am Casey Webb. I'm a director. I work with John. I've been working on healthcare transactions for a decade now. Would you mind flipping to slide 26? Thank you. So I'm going to very briefly walk you through the partnership process, but the most important thing to keep in mind here is our role in this process is first to facilitate an efficient process. And we know we can do that. We have the breadth of experience. We have the right contacts. We've already done a lot of homework on your situation, and we feel as though we have a good base understanding of where you're at. And that should make the process simpler and more efficient. And number two, one of our second really key role is taking the burden off of your leadership team in those certain areas of the partnership process that are a bit more onerous on your leadership team, such as the due diligence process. We'll act as an intermediary for some of the questions and the information requests that will come from a potential partner, and we'll help synthesize those in a way that makes it more digestible for your leadership team. So walking through the process real quick, we'll start by getting to know you better, requesting a little more information, just a little more information. A lot of it's already publicly available, so we've kind of already done that due diligence. We'll work through your mission statement with you and transition that into more of a partnership criteria. And so you've already done an excellent job preparing a mission statement that is market relevant. You know, we have maybe a couple things we would add to it, but in general, we were really impressed by the work that this board has already done to coagulate those mission statements. From there, we will develop a partner list and work with you on that list. We feel as though we've already developed sort of a preliminary list, and it's a little bit farther back in our presentation. We don't need to flip to that. And so we'll prepare materials that describe the key attributes of your health system, and we feel as though there are many positive. John ticked off a number of them. And from there, we'll obtain proposals from the potential partners and help you synthesize those. Some of the proposals may be apples, some may be oranges, but that's our area of expertise, is aligning those proposals in a way that is comparable. So, lastly, the partnership process, we generally feel would take 6 to 10 months. We've already done a lot of the upfront to prepare for a partnership process, so we feel as though we could get in the market very quickly, and get to an answer for you very quickly.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in a couple of comments there. As Casey was saying, speed to market. We're able to get moving tomorrow. We're able to, we already have most of our research on the market done. We have all the research on potential partners completed. At this point, it's working with you to refine the messaging. That messaging is, number one, what's our criteria? What are we looking for in a partnership? What are the attributes we're looking for in a potential partner? And then lastly, what's our elevator speech? What is the messaging that we are going out to these potential partners and telling them that, hey, we are special. This is a great opportunity for you. So we can provide a lot of guidance there, but ultimately that's your messaging. So we want to work with you to develop the most powerful message that we can bring to the market. Mm-hmm. And by the way, because of all the work we've done in this area, we can do that, and we can be out there within the next 30 days or so, bringing that to these potential organizations or to these partners. So speed to market is important. We don't want to rush things and miss out on something. This has to be a professional process. We see a lot of organizations that try to go out with an RFP or something like that. It's just inviting all types of requests for proposals. We don't find that works very well. Mm-hmm. In other words, prepare the materials that show that, hey, you're taking this seriously, you're providing them with the information that we think they know, and really describing what makes you unique and the opportunities that you have. We go through that process, and we do it in about the period of time that those who just issue RFPs come out with. So I'll stop there.
Well, and I think that pretty much sums up the partnership process. I feel as though we've given a pretty good overview of our capabilities and our initial thoughts on your situation. So does it make sense to jump into questions? Or
yeah, we'd like to open it up for questions. We can go into any other topic as well. I
got a few for you guys. Given the nature of our hospital district, have you dealt with a similar situation where you're subject to open records requests and stuff like that? Can you give me an example of one of those? For Texas especially.
Yeah, Texas I don't know that we have. We are working with the DC government right now. It doesn't come more complicated than that. The DC government owns United Medical Center. It serves the two poorest poorest wards, wards 7 and 8 in the DC marketplace. 100-year-old facility is struggling with all types of issues. What we are working with there is resolution and the like to find a partner either for United Medical Center or for a new hospital that would replace it. We're working with George Washington University to be able to accomplish that. So a lot of public information available on that. Obviously everything is public in that regard. Hardin Memorial in Kentucky is county owned. It is being sold, when it's partnering with Baptist, that we've gone through the same process there. We've got something in Mississippi that we're going through this process on. So we can tick off. I will say this. I at least half of our engagements over the last 2 years have involved a municipality. Municipalities are subject to open records. There's a reason for that, and we work, by the way, with municipalities even on the strategy front. Whether city-owned, county-owned, district, parish-owned, things like that, they're all going through the same process of should we be in the business of healthcare? There's financial risk. We know as healthcare is transitioning more to value, there's different expertise that is required. In a lot of cases, you have to get bigger. You have to be part of the system. There's a lot of technology requirements. The difficulty in recruiting physicians, things such as that. And so municipalities across the country are making the same type of decisions that you are making with, and we work with a lot.
Okay. You mentioned also that you dealt with academic medical centers. what is the difference between an academic medical center, and why would an academic medical center seek to move into this market versus a nonprofit or a for-profit hospital? What is it that motivates an academic center to expand its geographical area?
Yes, there are a lot of think tanks that are out there that are saying, what does the health system of the future look like? And most of them see an academic medical center at the core. And a lot of those academics themselves are starting to look at what do we want to be? Is our focus solely on the academics, or do we want to be part of some greater type of a healthcare delivery system? And so we are working with all types of these organizations. Some examples, we work with Tulane, we work with University of Missouri Health, we're doing some work with. We're working with an ACC school that's trying to get into this business to support a school of medicine. What they are looking at, and we can add a lot of names, University of Kentucky, University of North Carolina, things like that. They're looking at, do we need to be in the community hospital space? In other words, do we stay as an academic, or do we reach out into the community hospitals? And we're finding more and more that they see the need to partner the two. It's a little challenging with the faculty versus the community physicians. That's an issue that we deal with. We deal with a lot of the cultural, at least perceived differences between the two. It's probably not as big of a hurdle as you think, but there's perceptions in that regard that, hey, I'm a community hospital, or I'm a community physician, I can't work with faculty physicians. That's not necessarily true. We're seeing it become successful more and more. What we're finding is the academic has the reputation, the research, and those capabilities, and the pipeline, the recruiting pipeline, that can help these community hospitals. Now, what they're not necessarily good at right now is operating a community hospital. And so that's where we're seeing some other partnerships pop up. You're seeing Duke and LifePoint get together. You are seeing UHS and George Washington University get together. You're seeing Ardent and UT get together. The reason? Operational expertise with the attributes of that medical, or the academic.
Can I ask you a follow-up on the UT Ardent system, or the situation? So when you make these affiliations, you make these contacts, who would we be dealing with? I mean, who are the decision makers there? And is it a school board, or not school board, but state education, the UT system, or do they break it out into a medical school system, who visits there? Who makes the decision on their side to move into new markets? Who would we deal with, and who would be our counterpart?
Yeah, it would be a combination of the two. And by the way, each one is a little bit different. Like the negotiations, what's important, who do we want to report to, that sort of thing. From an operational perspective, Ardent would bring a lot of the capabilities. They know how to operate efficiently a community hospital. They're good at it. So is LifePoint has all types of these opportunities. Duke's a good system, but guess what? LifePoint is a better operator. So you see that expertise there. But there's a lot of alignment. The School of Medicine it is not going to give up some of the issues that are associated with the physicians, with quality, things such as that. And so you see different components and different committees that are formed and different responsibilities between the two.
Yeah. And this is
Just a minute. John, if you'd speak into the microphone,
Oh, I'm
they're
sorry.
screaming and they're having a difficult time hearing
I
what you're
apologize.
saying.
and then the last one I have for the moment is, have you dealt with any instances where you've had to deal with an state's attorney general, or the office of the attorney general, or under a CIA, or even bond trustees? Have you had any situations that are analogous?
Yes. In every situation, when you're dealing with some sort of an affiliation on a hospital or health system side, you're gonna have some attorney general review and responsibility. Sometimes there's some antitrust issues and the like that pop up, and we deal with those at the appropriate time. There's only one potential option here that we would foresee any issue in that regard, but we deal with it when we need to. Sometimes we have had to determine alternative structures to accomplishing certain things in those types of situations. But would we foresee much of that here? No, we wouldn't. But we've also worked with the bond trustees and things such as that as well. We have what is called a restructuring practice that is very adept at working through basically the debt side as well. And so it's a capability we don't necessarily want, but we have brought that to bear in certain hospital deals.
I have a question, Casey. You show the timeline here that it would basically be the whole process from like 6 to 10 months, but you said that it would, you've already done some of your due diligence and so forth. I would expect that you would do that for almost every client. So, but do you perceive that the process, because you've done enough because of the other partnership deals that you've done in this area, so you've already kind of looked at us, would it be shorter then, and how much?
Not to commit to a timeline, but we're pretty confident we can get to the market very quickly. We're very familiar with this market, and that gives us a lot of benefit in that we've already had interactions on partnership discussions with the potential partners in this market. And so, this timeline is probably a realistic timeline. And you're right, we do due diligence on all of the parties. I will say we did quite a bit of due diligence on this particular one because your situation has been ongoing, and we wanted to make sure we really understood where you are at this moment, and even up until your board meeting a week or two ago, we wanted to hear what your performance was, and we were quite impressed by the improvement. So, John?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is we'll be able to get you options relatively quick. What we don't know is how quick you will make a decision, whether or not there are multiple different options to consider, and is the board aligned on those options. And number two, the back end regulatory piece of this is, for the most part, out of our hands. And so there's often a due diligence period, and then the Attorney General and other reviews that take place. We're at the mercy of others for that piece of it. And so again, we can get out to the market, we can get back the proposals and the information relatively quick. From there, we can push this as fast as others will allow, but we also don't want to force it either. We were real pleased to see the rebound in your financial performance. That gives you a little bit more runway. It also puts you in a better position to negotiate from a position of strength. And so, because of that, we don't see as much of the compulsion to let's make something happen immediately. Again, we want to get out there. We want to find out what options are available for you. We want to get them in front of you, but then we also want to negotiate the best deal possible. And when I say that, I'll refer back to your criteria. What we liked is the mix of the financial and non-financial aspects. What you're likely to get back are proposals that vary in the financial and non-financial areas. When we go through and we help you make that decision, we prioritize your criteria. What's most important? It's got to be a good financial deal, but you shouldn't do this if it's just a financial deal, unless your survival is at stake. If that's the case, then you certainly push forward with it. You're looking for this right strategic and cultural fit. Who's going to come in and make the commitments to invest in and grow our service lines, not cut them? Who's going to come in here and help with our recruiting? What areas are we short of? Who's going to make the commitment to the employees that provides us the protection that we're looking for in any sort of a partnership? Who's going to bring the technology? Who's going to bring the expertise so that we better serve are, the community itself. So we always go into these things saying, let's find that right strategic and cultural fit. And by the way, if you look at, I think there's a good Forbes study out there that looks at failed partnerships and why they fail. Poor cultural fit is number one. Poor integration is number two. So integration planning and ultimately coming together and executing on what everybody is saying. We spend a lot of time focusing on both of those issues because we know you have to live here after this deal is done. And so this may be the most important decision this board ever makes because it's going to impact the healthcare in this community for decades. It's hard to unwind partnerships. And so you want to make sure that you are picking the right one and you're not doing it just for a financial reason.
When you see a university system come and we're 2 blocks from SFA, do you expect some pushback? I don't see the Texas A&M hospital 2 blocks from SFA and there not being some conversation with SFA happening that would allow that to be a good relationship.
What we usually say is we try to look at who's impacted by any potential partnership search. I don't know enough about SFA to give you a good answer for what their response is going to be, but I will tell you we will spend time discussing that with the steering committee and with the executive team so that if it does impact them or us, we understand what that potential impact is. In some cases, and I'll bring up, I will bring up the DC project we were working on. The deal that we're talking about with GW, a very well-respected organization, has a potential negative impact on Howard University. So we've morphed the conversation more into what can we do that lessens the impact on Howard as well, and how can we help it so that there isn't some negative hit there. And so we would, if there is a potential issue that may arise, we want to get up in front of it, is the only thing I can answer or tell you at this point.
Fees. So y'all charge, it's $30,000 a month, right? And but you credit half of those fees toward the end deal, whatever 5 years fee is. So
Correct.
and there's no down payment, and we only reimburse your expenses. We don't pay an hourly rate for your service.
You do not. The only thing I will say in that regard, we are a very comprehensive organization. Certain healthcare partnerships can be complicated. Sometimes issues arise in compliance, other areas. The only area that would be an upcharge if we had it is if there's something that you would have to go out and engage another organization to provide that service. So if the only thing that we do, we probably provide that service, we can bring it in at a seamless basis. But if it's something that's different than the traditional, if it's a change in scope, basically, and something that you either have to go find the right party, we can bring that in seamlessly in that type of area. It can be an upcharge. We don't push it. We usually offer options. If you want to use us, use us. What we want to make sure is that we provide the right guidance to you. That hey, we see an issue here. You need it resolved. If you want to talk to one of ours, great. If you don't, use somebody else. The attorneys often have recommendations as well in that area.
Is there any room at all for negotiating with your letter of intent? Because there are several things that I made note of, and I'd like to at least visit with you about it.
We're happy to have the conversation. We definitely want to work with you. I would say it depends. We have to go through in front of our engagement committee to get approvals on changes. So depending on the situation, we would certainly consider some changes to the engagement letter.
Okay. Does anybody have any of the case studies that they'd like for them to review a little bit?
If interested, I can give you like a 30-second overview on each one of them to see if that sparks any sort of questions or comments.
John, let's go back to the one that's the big, it's kind of in your favor, the gorilla in the room. It's the Trinity Mother Francis venture with Christus. That was a decision that was made by Trinity Mother Francis, looking forward that their market share was declining and they were not going to be viable in that market. And they decided years before they even got into any near any financial trouble to make the affiliation. How do you deal with, in my mind, coming from this situation, how do you deal with relative heavyweights in the medical field? When they try to combine those markets and merge those two together, how do you go about dealing with that process? And what's the process because those are they're almost equally matched, but one of them recognized.
2/3, 1/3.
Yeah, so they were like, one recognized that they were in a situation that was untenable. We've had that thrust upon us. We're quite aware that we are in an untenable position, but how do you reconcile, those kind of decisions, and how do you bring your expertise to those kind of processes?
Right. In a lot of cases, it's the appropriate planning. Number one, it's the negotiation up front. That one was a little bit different because Trinity Mother Francis had so much negotiating leverage. They had options, and we would be hopeful that there's options here as well. The more options you have, the more ability you have to negotiate favorable terms and commitments, things such as that. I mentioned before, we want somebody to come in and grow the service lines, grow the marketplace, grow investments, and bring things to the table as opposed to start talking about, okay, what services do we want to cut, or let's consolidate facilities, things like that. We want to negotiate from a position of strength, so that starts it. So we were pretty demanding in what we expected out of that or any type of situation like that particular deal. Then development of the right governance structure. Who has what say? There's contractual rights that you're usually negotiating. That okay, if we join, what is the strategy? We'll remove it from that particular conversation to just a hypothetical one like that. Let's start talking about the strategic plan for the marketplace itself. We want to see what the partner's strategic plan is going to be, so that we can participate in it. What rights do we have in executing that plan? What commitments are they going to bring to the table in executing that? Ultimately, when you do pick a partner, the contractual terms end at some point, so you need to do your upfront due diligence to make sure they're the right partner. So even after they're no longer obligated to invest or commit to service lines and capital and things such as that, they're going to do it because it's the right thing to do. So if you get that right partner, you're going to be able to be in a good position to
We
do
don't
that.
just allow them to facilitate due diligence on us. We perform reverse due diligence on them as well to make sure that they're the partner that you think they are.
How is the valuation of the deal or whatever, the final, how is that really calculated? Because when I read in your letter, I'm just going, oh my goodness, when it says future, what is it?
Usually capital commitments is usually what you're dealing with there. And we're happy to walk you through that, because we do a lot of we do a lot of prep when we determine where that comes out. And if one of the concerns and considerations is that, how do we know how big this could be? Well, number one, I guess I'd point out, if we hit a home run and it's a great win for you, we would expect it to be a nice win for us too. But we also get that under some hypotheticals, our fee can get really large. And so if there's, we're certainly willing to talk about caps and things such as that. That's usually what we bring into play in these types of situations. because these not-for-profit affiliations are complicated. This is not like, in a lot of cases, let's say a physician-owned hospital or surgery center or something else, where it's usually just what's the top dollar? Who's gonna pay me the most that we can distribute? This is all about, better positioning you to serve the patients in Nacogdoches County. And so that usually means there isn't some big pot of money that comes in the form of purchase price. This is about partnership. This is about figuring out how to invest. What are we investing in? What's the strategic plan? What are the facilities that we need to invest in, or the IT that we need to invest in? And so partners aren't willing to say, let's take this pot of money and let the municipality have it. Now, if we can get that, great, and we would certainly negotiate for that. This is more about the commitments that they are usually willing to make. And so the formula that we use for not-for-profit and municipal-owned hospitals is different than we would use if this was outside of healthcare, or if this was a for-profit organization.
Thank you.
Situations such as ours, municipalities, county hospital districts, what, do you have a number on percentages versus how many are asset buys versus partnerships, things of that nature? 2/3, 1/3?
They differ, and there's a continuum of partnership structures that are out there. It goes from everything that's from a light perspective, could be an academic affiliation, it could be service line partnerships, things such as that. It can be management agreements, we've seen that. Leases are popular. It can be complicated to do joint ventures with the municipality involved. Sometimes they're not, the municipality is not allowed to participate in a joint venture like that. And so if you go to the tight form of affiliation that we see in a lot of these areas, a lot of those are asset. They're deemed asset acquisitions. Because that's the easiest one to accomplish and the most preferable from some partners. With some municipalities, that's not the preferred option, and so we look at alternatives, and that's where you come up with some different options. You can do some joint ventures. It isn't necessarily the municipality that is the owner there. It would be in typical situations, it would be a foundation that is set up for the benefit of the community, because they're allowed to have that ownership interest in that type of a scenario. But one of the things we do at the front end of these is really talk to the board and the steering committee to identify what is your preferred end result, whether that's the structure or the type of partner, or the different criteria that you're looking for. And then once we do that, we can start honing the message to any potential partners that if one form is either preferred or really not on the table or not under consideration, we usually deal with that up front, so that hopefully the proposals that come back fit what we are looking for, as opposed to what the partner would prefer. Sometimes it can be a give and take, though.
I know that we provided you with the board statement of the goals that we were looking for in a partnership. In reviewing that, have you seen anything at all that we might need to have some, education on? That maybe it would be way out of the
Well, let's put it this
criteria.
way. You covered a lot of the areas that we like to see. And I will bring you to page 28. 28 is a sample scorecard that, this particular one was used by another, and it was developed by and used by another health system when it was picking its preferred partner. And what we do is we like the fact, number one, that you've already gone through the process of developing this criteria. A lot of cases, we have to start that from scratch. But I also like, like I mentioned earlier, you have a nice mix of the financial and non-financial factors that are important. So you're always looking for things such as, who's gonna best position us to be a high-quality provider? And then everything else should fall underneath that one. You wanna secure the position of this organization in this community over the indefinite period of time. And then everything else should really fall underneath that, whether that's the form of an affiliation, whether that is the type of partner, things such as that. All those are important, but probably receive less weight. The areas we really wanna make sure we see, are the strategic issues. Who views this market similar to us? And are they willing to put some capital into that as well? So that's where some of the financial aspect comes in. Who is willing to make commitments on service lines? Who's willing to make commitments on the staff itself and recruiting and some of the IT areas and things such as that. And so what we end up doing is we work with you to develop this scorecard and prioritize it. What is most important to you? We come down and we plug those in. The criteria you came up with, I think every one of them is on that scorecard. So you guys did a nice job of developing that. Sometimes at the end of this, you have to just realize that there's give and take in a lot of negotiations, and sometimes you have to give up in some areas. It could be governance, could be something like that, in order to get something else. And so, we work with you. One of the things we do is show you what other systems in your position were able to negotiate, and what were the terms in their affiliation and their partnerships, so that you can at least have a guide as to where the market is right now and what we're seeing with others. And then your negotiating position will usually dictate whether you can do better or worse.
Thank you. Anybody else? You've been kind of quiet, Ryan. You've been quieter yet, Farrah.
I made notes earlier.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
No, we do some, we do a lot of work. Is he really? Yeah, no, the reason we couldn't do it for that one is because we were working with Tremont Francis and TMC, that was a conflict. Those two, one. Okay.
Okay, to continue our meeting with Noella's compliance report, I'm going to need a motion to take that into executive session.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to take a compliance report into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. And because we have a newly posted special meeting to deal with interim CEO, we need to postpone C to Monday at 8 o'clock to that meeting. Do I have a motion to do that? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We will take care of that in Monday morning's meeting. Okay. Now, do we need to just discuss what we did? Does that have to be?
Well, I've got some additional information regarding the two presentations that I'd like to do in executive session.
Okay,
It's got some legal analysis as part of it.
okay, so,
I just don't know where you want to put
yeah,
that.
that's fine. So I need to have a motion to be able to take some legal aspects that Deborah wants to relate to us regarding the two presentations to executive session. Farrah moved, is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Motion carries. So we will adjourn into executive session at this point in time. What time is it?